Wednesday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock in time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Browns training camp underway out in Berea. Practice underway for the first time that is open to the media. Before practice, Myles Garrett with his expectations for the Browns this season.
Expectations are higher than ever. Expect to bounce back from last year, myself and defensively and as a team. So the standard doesn't change, or at least it doesn't lower. It just raises and improves. I think we have guys who are older, understand, know both sides of the coin. Come from a really good season, come from a really bad season. It can happen just like that. So you've got to take that into account every single day when you're training and getting to know your guys. The margins for this game are very thin. I expect to get to the Super Bowl. That's our expectation every year. I expect to run back the Defensive Player of the Year. So, keeping both of those things in mind, I have to be the very best player I can be every single day, whether we're practicing or playing. As soon as I step foot in the building, I have to be the best version of myself and the best leader I can possibly.
Joel Bitonio, offensive lineman, was asked about the message regarding training camp and getting ready for the season that was given to the team.
Yeah, we've talked about intensity, we've talked about energy, we've talked about we got to start fast and we got to keep building up. We have a couple of joint practices; those always bring up the intensity. So I think we're going to have a high intensity physical training camp.
Is there one camp that sticks out that was tougher, more high intensity, or more physical than any you can remember?
It's hard. I think early in my career, you don't know what you don't know. So like my first and second year with Pedden. There was a lot more allowed. Like you could do half line still, you could do like inside run, tackling drills and stuff. And so those always felt a little bit more physical than we've kind of progressed to. I think that's more of an NFL-wide thing though.
Since veterans don't play a lot in preseason games, how much do those two joint practices help in terms of getting ready?
Yeah, there's a positive to them. I think if you have a good team that you're going against and you get controlled reps, in a controlled environment, sometimes they get a little out of place, especially if it goes more than a day or two because one team wins the first day and the next team comes back angry because they got yelled at the night before. If you have good practices, it can be very helpful.
Denzel Ward, defensive back for the Browns, before practice today, asked how this defense can get back to where they were 2 years ago after a really disappointing season last year.
Just consistency, coming in, working hard, getting on the same page with things, and just being out here and getting those reps out here with the guys, and just knowing that that's our goal, to be the best defense in the NFL, and we're going to get there. We're going to make it happen.
What do you think happened last year? I mean, you guys weren't bad last year, but you just weren't what you were the year before. What was different?
What was different? I don't know. That's kind of tough. I mean, like I said, we weren't bad, but it's tough holding that number one spot. So I think we just got to come back with a hungrier mindset, and just to get back to that number one spot. And I think we got the guys capable of doing that. Yeah, I think it's the mindset, really. Like I keep speaking on, it's the mindset. Like we all hungry, we all want to get to it, and we're just being intentional about all our things that we're doing in the building and the meetings and things that's being said. And then definitely when we come out here on the practice field, everything's going to be intentional.
Kind of going off of that too, the mental drain that comes with the 3-14 season, going into a new season. Kind of how do you rebound from what happened last year?
We 0-0 right now, so not 3-14. We 0-0. Everybody on a clean slate, and this is a new year, man. So like I said, we ready to get to it. We gonna work hard to win some games for this city, and we gonna make it happen.
We'll hear more from the Browns players a little bit later in the show. The Browns unveiled their new alternate helmet today. They're calling it the Alpha Dog helmet. They unveiled it with a fancy video. I'm guessing rookie Harold Fannin Jr. likes it because it's a lot like the Bowling Green helmet he wore in college. The Guardians were trying to make it 2 in a row against the Orioles over at Progressive Field last night. Joey Cantillo facing Brandon Young for Baltimore, and the Guardians got after it pretty early. First inning, Jose Ramirez facing Young, and yeah, that one leaves in a hurry. A solo home run made it 1-0 Guardians. In the third, Kyle Manzardo at the plate. And Kyle Manzardo hits one right back up the middle. It's an RBI single to make it 2-0 Guardians. 3-2 Guardians. In the sixth, Ramon Laureano. Remember him? He's with Baltimore now. A solo home run. That made it 3-2. In the sixth inning, though, the Guardians get it back. Brian Rocchio, an RBI single to make it 4-2. Still in the sixth, Angel Martinez. Another RBI single. That made it 5-2. The Guardians win it by a score of 6-3. Guardians move to 2.5 back from the wild card's final spot. 3 teams are between them and that final spot. Slade's Coney scheduled to go tonight against Zach Eflin in Game 3 of the series. Also, Chase DeLauder underwent a hamate bone surgery on his wrist. He is out 8 to 12 weeks. We'll talk a little bit with Keith Law about the Guardians draft class coming up later in the show. Up first, though, Jacob Roach. We're talking Browns on Sports4CLE. After this quick timeout, stay with us.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on.
Browns are up first on Sports4CLE. The team out on the field in training camp for the first time with the media watching in 2025. A long time Cleveland talk radio host Tony Rizzo with what he wants to see from the Browns in training camp this year.
Stefanski realizes they did a really crappy job last year getting this team ready to play. And I think that everything they do from now until September 6th is going to be to get whoever it is ready to play the opener against Cincinnati.
I think the Browns completely acknowledge that they botched just about everything last year. And I think that this training camp is going to more resemble what the Pittsburgh Steelers do in training camp than some country club atmosphere where they didn't get any work done. I mean, their number one goal of training camp was keep everyone healthy. You have to get ready to play the game.
With that, let's welcome in Jacob Roach from the Orange and Brown Report and the Barking Browns podcast. Jacob, I said last year when they were going through it, after about 1-7, whatever you did last year, don't do it. So I kind of agree. And I don't often agree with Tony Rizzo. And I like Tony, but I agree with him.
Yeah, no, I think they hit the nail on the head with this one, man. Like, because you're 100%. Everything that they did last year, throw that out the window. Don't do that. It resulted in 3 wins. You know, they talk about feeling like they were kind of dead on arrival when they got there, and I really like that they also brought up the trying to keep everybody healthy. It's like, yeah, that is important. But kind of we've seen a ton of soft issue injuries happen over the last couple of years when they were taking that approach. So I don't even know if the more lackadaisical approach to keep everyone healthy was even really working from that standpoint, let alone them being ready to play. So yeah, I definitely think they have got to throw out the way they've been doing things, especially last year. They've got to up the intensity and all those things this year if they want to have a better result.
Yeah, before practice, Myles Garrett met with the media, was asked if there's a sense in training camp this year that it will be more physical and competitive than it has been the last couple of years.
For sure. I mean, even talking about it today, the D-line has put a real emphasis on one-on-ones during practice. having a board, a setup for, wins and losses, and just taking hold of that, looking at it where, if the guy with the most wins is probably going to be the guy who's lining up on Sunday. The guy who's getting off the quickest, or beating this guy compared to this guy. I think all those things will be taken into account, and it'll be something that the whole team pays attention to instead of just our groups individually.
And again, that's one of the things I'm going to pay attention to is do they do a more physical and more competitive and higher intensity? Because that wasn't the case the last couple of years.
And this isn't the first player we've heard say this offseason, and obviously coming from Myles Garrett holds a lot of weight. But Grant Delpit, I wrote on this a few months back for the OBR during OTAs. He talked about the intensity and the physicality and all being at a much higher level. And that was before training camp, that was before pads are coming on here shortly and before these joint practices in a couple of weeks. And I really like him talking about there being competition. I often think competition amongst teammates brings out the best in everybody, but he's talking about, we're marking wins and losses and you want to beat this guy and you want to beat that guy. And it's like, we've seen that with the Guardians in the past when then like Jose will have like home run competitions, with other hitters who can lead the team and things like that. And I think it's led to friendly competition that made the team better. And I don't see really that big of a downfall in doing that approach. So we've now heard multiple times like, yep, more competitive, more intense, which how are you going to get all these quarterbacks enough reps to decide who's the guy? You got to get more reps in each individual practice, and you're not allowed to make practices longer. That stuff is really set in stone by the CBA. So you've got to be going faster. You've got to be more physical. You've got to get more in the same amount of time. So yeah, that's exactly what I'm watching too. But at least so far, it seems like that is the plan.
All right, so some news from around the NFL, and we'll connect the dots here. Joe Mixon, who was the lead running back for the Houston Texans, has been placed on the non-football injury list. That would mean that Nick Chubb, a former Brown, moves up to number 1 running back for the Houston Texans. And Quinshon Judkins, not signed, probably going to get suspended. Those two things kind of lead me into where I'm going. You wrote an article about Dylan Sampson. He's got to be the lead guy, it looks like.
Yeah, and that, which is just not something we expected. Like, obviously Quinshon Judkins was the plan to probably be the number 1, and then Dylan Sampson, can you tell Shadur's on my mind, kind of being that complimentary back with Jerome Ford. But when I go back and I look at his tape, I'm reminded that in that draft cycle, I had Dylan Sampson as running back 6, just behind Travion Henderson, and my 50th overall prospect. So him being there outside the top 100 was a big surprise for me. But you're looking at a guy that I think can be a serious weapon. I think he was going to be a weapon no matter what. We're just looking at probably a higher volume with him and Jerome Ford probably being like a 1A, 1B situation while Judkins is gone. The thing that really stands out, and I don't like pro comps a lot because then you're going to say, oh, you're saying Dylan Sampson is this guy. But there's some Nick Chubb-like qualities in Dylan Sampson's game that fit this offense. He has tremendous patience and vision in the backfield. And when you're talking about wide zone, pin pull, and all this stuff that, Kevin Stefanski made his bread and butter, especially in 2020 and 2021 when he first got here, you're talking about situations where the linemen are pulling and they're trying to hit a spot and they have to get out in front. And Nick Chubb would always do such a great job of being patient, not too patient, but being able to wait for those blocks to set up and those rushing lanes to appear. And then if it was there, he was going to find it and he was going to explode through it. Well, in that aspect, Dylan Sampson is similar. He is very explosive, has great top speed. So he's able to be more patient than some other backs because he has the explosiveness and the athleticism to take advantage of shorter rushing windows in terms of like, oh, some guys can't wait too long because they don't have the speed to then get past the defensive lineman and things of that nature. But he has that. So I think his fit is really, really good in that sense. He's a smaller back. You're looking at 5'8", 200 pounds. You're not looking at a guy that I think is a 25 touch a game guy, which is kind of where I thought Quinshon Judkins would be. So you're not going to see him fully take that load, but he is a guy that does sometimes use that size to his advantage in a sense where it's like that rushing lane may be really tiny, but he'll get skinny, fire through there, slip through a very small area and take off. And so, Dylan Sampson is maybe not a workhorse caliber back. He's got some fumble issues. He had a fumble. He only had 4 last year, but with the number of carries he had, it was basically a fumble every 50 carries. You can't have that. But the patience, the vision, and the speed, I do think he can be like a 15-touch kind of guy and a major weapon.
Yeah, they're going to need him to step up, and the learning curve is going to be accelerated with no Judkins, without question. All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, I'm from Colorado, and I think Jamari Thrash is going to be a big threat this year. I'd said this last year, but I think it's his time to shine this year because he's proven it through training camp and minicamp. So give him a shot. Just give him a shot. Like, what do you have to lose? You have a talented wide receiver right there. Don't throw away his talent. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Jacob, I say this with any young player. Nothing is given. You got to earn a shot. There's 7, 8, 9 other guys. You got to be better than them if you want the shot.
An interesting thing about Jamari Thrash, but I'm with you 100%. Yeah, earned, not given. But especially when you're a day 3 pick, when you're a 5th round pick like Jamari Thrash, it's not like he was a top 10 pick and those expectations are there. But the thing about Jamari Thrash is he has been talked about during offseason. I know Ashley Bastock talked about him. I know that Chad O'Shea, also the wide receivers and pass game coordinator, said he was very impressed with the work that Thrash had put in away from the facility, not just what he was doing here during OTAs and minicamp and all those things, but that they could tell, he'd really worked on the playbook, working on his body, getting in great shape. I do think he is a potential breakout candidate. I could see him being a pretty solid contributor this year. He's a good route runner, a good separator. I think his body control and his ability to accelerate and deaccelerate and really change directions does a great job of kind of confusing defensive backs and creating that separation that makes him an easy target for his quarterback. And I think he's not going to run like a 4.3. He's relatively fast and he can get vertical, but he's not going to have this crazy blazing speed, but he gets up to that speed really quickly. He has explosiveness off the line of scrimmage, quick feet, especially in that short area. I think he's going to mostly be a slot receiver at the next level because he is a smaller, undersized guy, and I just don't know if he can win up against some of the bigger, more physical corners on the outside. But his acceleration make him really nice after the catch. I think his contested catches for a smaller guy is way better than you would think it is. But yeah, he fits this offense. He's going to be in the right place at the right time. He's going to be able to separate relatively well, and I think he's creative enough after the catch. He's going to have an uphill battle because I think there's a lot of other talented guys in that room, but it's wide open. Wide receiver 1's the only thing that I think the only role that's hammered down. So he absolutely has the opportunity if he can continue to put the work in and maximize his talent.
Jacob Roach from the Orange and Brown Report. Now I'm going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll hear more from Joel Bitonio and Myles Garrett. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Well, back to Sports4CLE. Before practice today, Joel Bitonio asked about the transition to, quote, Kevin Stefanski's offense.
It's O-lineman's, dream offense in that sense. Like, hey, we're going to run the ball. We're going to play action. We're going to take our shots when they're there. Quick passing game. But it's something we have to make happen. Like, it's great to say, but if the running game's not working, if you're not converting those runs and the play action, all that stuff, it turns into a drop back game. Like, no matter what you say, if you're down by 2 touchdowns early, you're going to start dropping back. So it's something that we have to make come true, but we are excited with the foundation.
So, Jacob, when you think about that, how important is this offensive line to what they want to do, and how confident are you that they can get back to where they were a couple years ago?
It's crucial. Like they absolutely have got to play, a lot better than they did last year. And I think, one thing that Joel talked about at the end of the season was like, I went from pulling 8 times a game to 8 times all year. So like it was a totally different offense that these guys were not built to run. And now that you're going back to like Bitonio and Teller, like the bread and butter, and Ethan Posick and like these guys were at their best in this system, like you're setting them up for success. Whereas last year it felt like a lot of the players were set up for failure because they were trying to force skill sets that didn't match an offense into that offense. And now they're going back to where they're putting them in the best position to succeed. I remain cautiously optimistic because it was bad last year and a lot of this offensive line is older. And, Jack Conklin was great, but that was his first real healthy season in 3 or 4 years. And, Bitonio and Teller and Posick, they're all getting older for offensive linemen. And so there's a real chance that they don't get all the way back. But I'm very cautiously optimistic in a sense that it seems like the team is confident, and I do think those players are better than what they were last year automatically with the scheme change. So I'm very cautiously optimistic, and a lot of it has to do with I don't know what's going to happen at left tackle, but I will also add that I think the depth, getting guys like Tevin Jenkins and Cornelius Lucas, makes that line a lot better, even if there are injuries and they can't stay healthy. But I'm still going to be cautious just because of how bad last year was. But I'm relatively optimistic they can do it.
So I know you've addressed this on the Orange and Brown Report. Biggest training camp battles offensively other than the quarterback position?
Yeah, for me, it starts at wide receiver. We talked a little bit about that just because wide receiver 1 seems to be the only one. To me, Cedric Tillman and Jamari Thrash are kind of roster locks in my mind, but their roles aren't necessarily locks. So it's basically wide receiver 2 and on. So, there's been some love for Cade McDonald and for Luke Floria, the local kid that may compete, and Deontay Johnson being that real wild card because, if you go look at how his season started in Carolina, he was still routing people up, one of the best route runners and one of the best separators in football is who he was at his prime. And he showed flashes of still being that guy. He's not 30 years old. I really hope the Browns have had good things to say about him and his work ethic and his attitude. I hope that sticks through the rest of the, it's easy to have a good, attitude in OTAs and things like that. So I hope that can continue on from that spot. And then left tackle is probably right up there. Cornelius Lucas versus Dawand Jones. We talked about that. There's some question marks there. Dawand, he was fine at left tackle at times last year, but he came in and did exactly what he had to do to, I think, get to where they want him to be, get to where they think he can be, because I do think he has the talent to be a quality starting tackle in the NFL and even on the left side. And he dropped a bunch of weight. That's exactly what he had to do to try to get there. So can he keep that weight off? He looks like he's moving better, which that's been my issue, is like he can't move well as a run blocker. But if he gets back to being the kind of pass protector he was when he was on the right side as a rookie, if he could do that on the left side, I can deal with not great run blocking play because of his size and his length and the things that he can do as a pass protector, which will help them in the play action game. So that battle is really big. And, Cornelius Lucas is kind of a journeyman, swing tackle, but he was significantly better at left tackle in 300 snaps he played last year for Washington than anybody who played left tackle for the Browns. So if it doesn't work, Dawand's not ready, if he needs to go back to the right side or whatever, I think they have a really nice veteran behind him that you feel comfortable starting most of the year if you have to. He's not going to be above average, but he can be league average, just maybe slightly above average. He's just not going to be a superstar at left tackle. But after what we had last year at left tackle, I think really anything would be an improvement. An average starter might look like a superstar to us. Some of that Jed Wills whiplash, PTSD there added in. And then for me, running back, I just want to see how running back plays out. Who's going to be that third running back while presumably Judkins gets suspended? So if you're going to run, I think a duo of Ford and Sampson, I think they're good enough. I think they can perform, but a lot of that'll fall on the offensive line and being able to give them, those rushing lanes to do it. But who takes that third running back job while Judkins is out? Are they going to bring someone in? Because are not really. They're lacking in a power back with Judkins out. I know Amani Marshall is on the roster from App State, but I'm not sure he's a very long shot to make the roster.
All right, so Myles Garrett earlier today, before practice, talked about his high expectations for the season, said he expects the Browns to be really good. Also, his thoughts on Mason Graham.
I have such high expectations for the team because I have such high expectations for myself. The team's going to go as I go. I'm going to try to be the driving factor behind that and create a standard in which everyone has to chase every single day.
Myles, what do you expect? Now you saw Mason Graham and OTAs, mini camp and all that. What do you think he can do to help this defense?
From what I've seen this offseason, I think he's worked his ass off. I've seen him in multiple different places, whether it's Pass Rush Summit, Houston with Malik, back up here after that. He's put in the work and he's really dedicated to the craft. So I really believe that he'll get out there and make a hell of an impact, very early.
So, Jacob, how confident are you that this defense can be top 10, top 5?
I would say I'm really confident that they'll be top half of the league. For them to be top 10, top 5, I would say cautiously optimistic. I know I keep using that, but I am optimistic because I do think the talent is there, but it's about young guys stepping up and taking on big roles. And not just Mason Graham, but, Alex Wright and Isaiah McGuire. Isaiah McGuire really established himself as a run defender. Can he take that next step as a pass rusher? What are they going to get opposite Myles Garrett? But you get a guy like Malik Collins, who I think is underrated, a pass rusher on the interior. And then Mason Graham, I think he gives you something you have not really had. Dawand Tomlinson gave you some of this, but he is a elite run defender. If he plays to his ability, I think he's a phenomenal run defender. And you just haven't had a guy, I think, quite as good at it. Dawand Tomlinson gave you some of that, but like in recent years, you just have not seen a guy be able to shut down the run, and he just demands double teams, and he's going to be there and push the pocket vertically. When Myles forces guys to step up, you're going to get guys like Malik Collins and Mike Hall and Mason Graham who are going to be able to get, 5 or 6 cleanup sacks this year, between them somewhere. There's going to be those opportunities, and you kind of got to hope that Martin Emerson can bounce back after a down year, because that's a big question, and Ronnie Hickman really needs to step up as the free safety. So they're betting on some of these guys that have shown you flashes and shown you they can be this. They just need to be that consistently. And if they take that next step, they have the talent to be a top 5 unit. I have no doubt about it, but it's just, there's some big ifs there right now. And it's just hoping that these young guys can take a step forward. And you hear that stuff about Mason Graham, one picture of him throwing up on the sideline, everybody wanted to call him a bust, but then all he's done since then is worked his tail off as a pass rusher, especially because we know what he can be as a run defender. And I just think the talent is there, and it's up to them to play up to that ability.
Jacob Roach from the Orange and Brown Report is always great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jacob.
Thanks, guys.
Jacob Roach, make sure you check him out. He is writer for the Orange and Brown Report and co-host of the Barking Browns podcast. Damon Wolfe from In Motion Football up next. Stay with us on Sports4CLE.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little flag in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me. The Ohio lottery. Put a little flag
We continue talking Browns on Sports for CLE. Browns out on the field. First training camp practice open to the media. Before practice, Kevin Stefanski asked about Quinshon Judkins. Still hasn't signed his contract, isn't with the team. He is dealing with domestic battery legal issues.
On the Quinshon Judkins situation, I don't have much to add. These are things that we take very, very, very seriously. We're gathering information. I know you guys will talk to Andrew tomorrow, but I don't have much to add on that situation. But
Kevin, along those lines, I know you're not going to speak on this specific topic, but this is another off season where a situation like this has come up. How concerning is that, and how much do you? I mean, I know you address it with, but do you feel like you have to do more to emphasize it?
I would tell you, again, this is something I take very seriously. We take very seriously. It's not something that we want to be a part of. We want to be shining the light on the good things that our guys are doing in this community. Having said that, I do know we go. The league mandates a certain amount of education in all areas, certainly in this area, and we decide to go above and beyond that, and we will continue to do that. And if there's more ways that we can reach players in any area, in any area of education, we'll continue to look at that.
Let's welcome in Damon Wolfe from In Motion Football. And Damon, those are the questions you got to deal with when those things happen, and it's why teams don't like when those things happen.
Yeah, the answers there are pretty par for the course from Stefanski. I would expect Andrew Berry will have kind of the same sentiment tomorrow and won't be able to say too much about the situation. Unfortunately, they're in a bad spot right now with just needing the process to play out legally. And we'll definitely have time for all that to play out and see what happens. But ultimately, I think that they've got to prepare to, not have Judkins for the first part of the season, and as he probably faces a potential suspension.
Yeah, without question. And so the quarterback question is one we'll get to in a minute because that's going to be one of the things that we keep track of all training camp long. In addition to that, another big question, probably the next biggest question, is can Dawand Jones step into that left tackle spot? Joel Bitonio, Myles Garrett, with their thoughts about Jones, and Garrett with how he can help him.
I think he's a lot more comfortable than he was when he was asked to play last year. I think he's a guy you see flashes with all the time. There's some great plays, and for him, we talked about just the consistency. He's obviously worked to get his body in better shape, and he's coming into camp in good shape. And it's just going to be a consistency, play-to-play battle. He has to go up against a guy like Myles in practice, and there's going to be some wins and some losses. And it's just having that mental attitude to come back and try and get better from it.
Just trying to walk him through my process while I'm rushing what I'm seeing, what I'm trying to set up, if I'm like laying bait or laying traps, and trying to get him to a point where if he can see those things in me, he can see those things in many of the other rushers across the league. I'm not the same style as those other guys, but I can try to emulate that and give him a look so he can be aware of those things and be prepared when the time comes.
Well, the thing with Jones has been health. One of the reasons he put on the weight is because he was injured and he couldn't do the things to keep the weight off. Got to be healthy. But if they can figure out, if he can claim that spot, that helps a lot.
Yeah, it certainly does. And it's a lot of positive things that we're hearing as training camp opens up in regard to Dawand Jones and the offseason that he's had. He looked great in minicamp and OTAs. He certainly, like you said, his health, being able to keep that weight off and the kind of shape that he's in certainly sets him up to win the left tackle position. And I think that having an entire offseason to prepare for knowing that he's expected to play left tackle is certainly going to be something that will benefit his performance this summer in camp and the preseason. I do think that, going up against Myles Garrett every day will make him better. He just has to have that kind of attitude about it. And like Bitonio said there, he's going to have some wins and losses. I always wondered how much, facing Myles Garrett in practice affected Jed Wills over the course of his tenure here. But, I think that Jones has tremendous potential, tremendous talent, and his size is just, he's a freak of nature out there at left tackle. And I think if he moves pretty well this summer, he'll fare very well at that left tackle spot.
Yeah, and my biggest question is, can he stay healthy through an entire NFL season? And if he can, I think he has a chance to be a starting caliber left tackle. I'm curious as to your thoughts about this one. So ESPN.com ranked all of the NFL rosters. They ranked the Ravens 1, the Eagles 2, the Lions 3, the Panthers 30th, the Browns 31st, ahead of only the Saints. They say the biggest strength is edge rusher, biggest weakness is quarterback, and the X factor for 2025 is the entire rookie class. Again, I know they're a 3-win team. I know they were picking second. And I know their quarterback position's a mess. But I still think there's about 7 or 8 teams whose roster that they're better than pretty significantly.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there, Dave. ESPN and PFF have the Browns rated, the roster rated very low this season. And I think most of that is in regard to what took place last year on the field. And, I still think that last year was an anomaly in what happened in the lead up to the season with the coaching staff and all of that took place. I think that this team is, there's still a lot of talent here and players here that, helped the Browns make the playoffs in 2023 when they won 11 games. So I definitely don't think that the Browns are near the bottom of the league. I certainly understand that there are question marks in regard to the roster, especially at quarterback, which we know is the most important position. But I mean, when you look at the position groups overall, I think the Browns have a top 5 defensive line. I think that the secondary overall is probably more so in the top 10. They've got Pro Bowl talent at tight end, Jerry Jeudy on the roster as a legit number 1 wide receiver who had over 1,200 yards last year. And, the rookie class, I think, is definitely going to turn some heads this season with their performance. The Browns are going to count on those guys, and I think those guys are capable of producing on the football field for them this year in year one, which is a little different than what we've had in years past. So I think things are looking up on the roster overall. We just have to solidify that quarterback position overall. And, in my opinion, I see the Browns very kind of middle of the pack without the quarterback. And if we could get a quarterback to play pretty well, then, you could consider the Browns closer to a top 10 roster, in my opinion.
Yeah, the quarterback cannot be a detriment. I think they're spot on with the X factor being the rookie class. But I do like the rookie class, and I think there's going to be 4 or 5 guys that are pretty significant contributors from that class.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think, of course, the Judkins situation really, really puts a damper on it right now. And overall, but you look at Harold Fannin, I think Dylan Sampson is going to be able to really produce. He was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year last year, and I mean, I think he just turned 21 years old. So both of those guys will certainly help out on offense. And Mason Graham in the middle of the defensive line. To hear Myles talk about Mason Graham earlier, that was great to hear, and I think that he's going to do a great job as well.
Dan Wolfe from In Motion Football and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the side of the break, we'll hear more from Kevin Stefanski specifically about the quarterback competition. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to Go Forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C,
Tri-C, where futures begin.
'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin. 'Where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Damon Wolfe from In Motion Football. Kevin Stefanski was asked about the quarterback competition and how much to read into it at the start of training camp.
All things depth chart, certainly quarterback. I have a plan that's in pencil, and we have to take in information every single day, take in how guys are handling certain situations, and then adjust from there. But we'll get to those type of decisions later on.
But is it possible that maybe like the decision could linger all the way up until like maybe the week one?
Till inactives come out on week one, you're saying? Listen, I think the big thing for me is putting our guys in position where we can evaluate them. I think they did a great job in the spring, all four of those guys. We'll continue to put them in some situations, but ultimately we'd love to make a decision sooner than later.
I know you said you can enroll the quarterbacks at least for this first week, but is it okay to start reading into taking more reps?
Are you asking for permission to read into? Yeah, I'll leave that up to you guys. I give you permission to make what you want of it.
Does it matter who's taking the first team rep today?
Yeah, I think you'll see at a bunch of different positions we will work guys in different areas. So I know it will get reported on who's in there first, and it may change. It will change tomorrow. So I'd caution you to read too much into it until we get much later on in the process.
So, Damon, reading between the lines there, they're going to do a lot of the same things that they did with the quarterback position in minicamp and those kind of things.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to have a clear answer very soon as to who the starter is going to be. And that's kind of refreshing to me to hear that, they're going to work every guy in and give guys the opportunities. It will be interesting to see how many reps certain players get with the ones and, second team and all that kind of stuff. But it is, I feel like the Browns were really open to anybody stepping up and winning the competition. And I think that, that's what you're looking for if you're going to have a true competition. Let the guys go out there on the field. And, as far as I know, they haven't taken the first snap yet of training camp. So all guys should be considered in the running and let the best man win.
Yeah, if you saw the quarterback play last year, you should be open to anybody winning that competition. We'll leave it at that.
That's for sure.
Myles Garrett, before practice today, some of the young guys on defense that he thinks could step forward and make an impact this year.
I'll say MJ. MJ for sure. I think he knows that he didn't have the year that he wanted to last year, and he had a great year before that, and he wants to continue to improve. He wants to prove that he's the guy, in that room, and that should always be the mindset. No matter who's in your room, whether it's me, whether it's Denzel, you're out to show that you're the very best. Whether it's on your team or across the league. I want to see him, achieve those goals for himself. Grant get back to playing at that Pro Bowl level. I want to see those linebackers step up, especially the young ones. I think DB has a lot to prove, especially has a lot to prove, and who's going to be at the end next to me. And I think a lot of guys are really taking hold of that challenge. Jock has made it very, very clear that it's up for grabs. So when you look at it like that, you've got to attack every single day. You can't let off the gas, for even one play.
Yeah, MJ's MJ Emerson. He mentioned Diabate, Schlesinger, and the ends. The competition, I love it. It should be that way all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the coaching staff, if I was Stefanski, I would be trying to make the quarterback room the example for the entire team. The coaching staff can really drive that home. Those guys in the locker room are watching that position group, and they're seeing those guys come in, who's coming in early, who's staying late, who's going to stay and put extra work in after practice, all that kind of stuff. So with the microscope on the quarterback position for competition, it gives you no excuses anywhere else on the roster to drive competition. And there's a lot of young players who can step up this year, that have the talent to step up, and we've seen flashes of it. And Emerson being mentioned there by Garrett as his, off the top is pretty encouraging. I think everybody knows how important his role is this year. And, we saw what he did in 2023 and what a great season he had, and was being put in a lot of top 5 cornerback lists in the league at that point during last offseason. So him regaining his form, regaining his confidence. I'm not exactly sure what all took place with him last year, but we are certainly looking forward to Emerson stepping up and having a big year this year.
So the Browns also claimed defensive end KJ Henry off of the Eagles. He got cut. They picked him up. 5th-round pick of the Commanders back in 2023, so they had another young kind of pass rushers at a couple of spots. All right, before I let you go, if the Browns are going to kind of bounce back a little bit like you and I think they might, other than the quarterback, keys to that happening, what has to happen for the Browns to be, 7-8 win team?
So for me, other than quarterback, I think the biggest thing is for them to take on, get back to a real physical identity. And they're going to have to really accomplish that over the next weeks of training camp leading up to that first joint practice session with Carolina. Carolina, I think that they're going to be a tough team this year and an improved team. They played well over the last 5 games. So it's going to be a good measuring stick for Stefanski. And then they're going to follow that up with their joint practices with the reigning Super Bowl champions. So they're really going to be tested this summer in camp, and it's really crucial for them to play physical, play aggressive, unlike what took place last year in training camp. The first part of the schedule was brutal. The first 6 games of the year, they're playing some really tough competition, really tough teams. So, they've got to be ready to go out there and, not get pushed around and not play soft like they did last season.
Damon Wolfe from In Motion Football, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Damon.
No problem, Dave. Anytime.
Make sure you check him out, Damon Wolfe, In Motion Football. We're going to turn our attention to the Guardians and specifically the draft class and some guys in the minors. Thrilled to be joined by Keith Law from The Athletic. Straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little flag in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on. Great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little flag in your day. Put a little flag in your day.
Sports4CLE continues. We turn our attention to the Guardians and specifically some of the guys they have drafted in the draft that just wrapped up a couple weeks ago. Let's welcome in Keith Law from The Athletic. Keith, let's go through 4 or 5 of the Guardians picks, and we'll start with a little bit of video. So Jace Lavalette was the guy that they selected with their first pick. And when we look at Lavalette, he was a guy that a lot say had as much raw power as anybody in the class. 6'6", 230, left-handed hitter. Down season as a junior. Broke a bone in his hand, played the next day. Now the Guardians came out recently and said he needs a cleanup procedure, so he won't play at all this year. With Lavalette, what do you see?
He does have plus power. And it was backed up by a lot of the data, the exit velocity data that we look at. I happened to see him against Tennessee. I saw him absolutely demolish a home run out to right. And I also saw him swing and miss 10 times in a weekend out of 20 swings total, which is not what you're looking for. And it could be the hand, obviously, but he swung and missed a lot as a sophomore too. And that's why I think he was ultimately available. This is a guy who came into the year, and some people were saying he could be the first overall pick. I was a skeptic. You don't strike out 80 times in a college season and go first overall. But I also didn't think he'd fall to the very last pick of the first round either. I think the hand was probably a factor. I think there's just some swing decision issues, just when he's literally as simple as what he's choosing to swing at, what he's choosing to take. I also think there's some mechanical things that they're going to need to work out. So he's a project, but you don't get perfect players at 27, right? If he were a perfect player, he would have been long gone. And I thought it made a ton of sense to select him, even though not their typical type of player. They haven't had a lot of success developing hitters, particularly power hitters, the way that they have developing pitchers. So I think it's a bit of a challenge for the newish player development staff they have there to see what they can do and what they can get out of him. Ultimately, you're hoping for a 25 homer a year right fielder. I think that's a realistic ceiling for him.
Yeah, and again, you kind of mentioned it. The swing decision things, those are typically things that, all rookies or guys going from college to professional that are power hitters have to work through.
And the issue with him and with a lot of guys, in this draft class is that they're doing it in college, right? It is, and I heard this about Vihiva Aloy, who was picked, I think, 3 or 4 picks later by Baltimore, went to Arkansas, also in the SEC, and his swing decisions were terrible. I mean, I am of two minds of that. One, if you're making bad swing decisions in college, and to be clear, Laviolette broke his hand at the end of the season too, so you can't even blame that for a lot of what came before. If you're making bad swing decisions in college, the pitching doesn't get easier. Certainly once you get to AA, AAA, and the majors, it might actually be easier in A-ball. But the flip side is these guys are young. They've probably never gotten a lot of good coaching, particularly if they're not at an elite school where they just don't have the facilities of maybe a major league team's player development department to work on pitch recognition, to work on ball strike recognition. There should be room for growth. It's difficult. I often point to Austin Riley as a guy who I think made one of the biggest leaps I've ever seen a player make in terms of swing decisions, recognizing multiple holes and figuring out how to choose what to swing at, what not to swing at. So it can be done. It's a challenge. And I don't think there's any team in baseball I would say is particularly good at that right now. It's very much been a case-by-case basis.
So the next guy they took in the second round, a Tennessee guy, 6'3", 218-pound shortstop. Dean Curley's scouting report solid, 2+ raw power that comes naturally. Understanding of the strike zone allows him to work gap to gap. Has gotten overly selective at the plate last season, might have affected his draft stock. What do you see with Curley?
So it's a simple swing. He makes a lot of hard contact. It could translate into some power. He did not hit as well in SEC play this year. And I don't think it was a matter of too much selectivity. I just think he struggled with better stuff. The pitching in the SEC, particularly on Fridays and a lot of Saturdays, is as good as what I see any day I roll into an A-ball ballpark. And so I do think there's a little bit of a disconnect between the swing and generally the approach and the results. That may be the result of facing better pitching, maybe the result of him not having the right approach. Again, coming down to swing decisions, knowing what your swing is. It's a lot of low line drives. It's not going to be big over the fence power, but he should be a gap to gap guy who hits a lot of doubles and is able to hit for average. He didn't do enough of that either. So it may be a matter of choosing which pitches he's going to swing at for optimum results. He is not a shortstop. And he struggled actually defensively even after they tried him at second and third. I still think that's what you do. You send him out at one of those positions. Just give up shortstop entirely and say, you're second baseman, and give him a lot of reps there to see if he can improve there just with more opportunities. Because he did play a lot of shortstop. I don't think he's anywhere near as comfortable at second or third as he was at his natural position.
So in the competitive balance round, this would be the Guardians' third pick. They go with another outfielder, Aaron Walton, big, strong right-handed hitter, 6'3", 219, viewed as power over pure bat, did make adjustments during his college season to cut down his strikeouts.
He's power over hit all the way. Good off-speed stuff gives him a lot of trouble. He's just looking for fastballs he can crush. If you can spin something, got a good changeup. He swung and missed in those pitches about a third of the time that he swung this past season. He does have a chance to stay in center. It's 20+ homer power. You can be a regular with a 290 on base percentage if you've got power and you can play real defense, if you're a defensive asset in center field. So I like the pick. There is a risk that this guy's going to get to AA or so where you start seeing those pitchers who've got good breaking stuff and they can locate it, and either he's going to struggle or he's going to have to make a pretty significant adjustment.
So when we talk about the Guardians, and we could go further into the draft, but it gives you an idea. This year, is it fair to skew that they kind of reversed things and went more power over contact. When we talked last year, we made a big deal that they were big-time contact guys.
And they did, right? Laviolette's a big power guy. Nolan Schubart, the third rounder, is a big power guy. Their fifth rounder, Riley Nelson, shows some power. I think he's probably more of a hitter for average, but he's a big guy and he's a first baseman. I know some people think there's untapped power in there. So I do think this was a very clear shift in their draft approach, where they were looking for guys who have now power or who show some underlying characteristics like Curley, where you might think there is more power. I don't know if they're going to do this, but what if they think they look at Dean Curley and say, oh, it could be like Max Muncy with the Dodgers, where if we change the shape of his swing a little bit, get his hands down so he's got more loft, more of those balls end up over the fence as opposed to just into the gaps. He's that type of player. And they just haven't really drafted a lot of those guys before. I mean, DeLauder sort of stands out because he did show some power and he does still show strong exit velocities. He's kind of a unicorn in a whole lot of ways. Also, they liked him because he was super young for a college player. It was very different than all of these guys we're discussing. So I thought this was a very clear departure from recent draft strategies for the Guardians.
Let's talk about last year's number 1 overall pick. Travis Bazzana came back from an oblique where he missed a boatload of time, 8-10 weeks. It might have been 11 or 12 weeks. When he's been healthy, he's played pretty well. What have you seen from Bazzana as a pro?
So last time I saw him personally was in spring training, and it wasn't great. I'd heard some comments from over the winter when doing my off-season prospect stuff, a lot of concerns about just how uphill his swing is. It is very, very steep, and that is how he generated so much power in college. Is that going to translate with the wood bat, pro ballparks, different baseball, different pitching, obviously? And what I saw from him a little bit in spring training and what we saw before he got hurt is it might not. He might not be the offensive player that we thought he was going to be. He's also not great at second base. There have been a lot of rumors about him, Cleveland wanting to move him eventually to the outfield. I think that's very premature. I also don't know for sure that Cleveland is actually thinking of that or if that's just people talking. But it's a question. Second base was always going to be a question for him. That's a lot of doubts, a lot of worries for a guy who went first overall. And now that he's back, and I'm going to see him this week, Backford is playing at Harrisburg, which isn't too far from me. I really want to see what the swing looks like, and we want to see him produce, right? He hasn't had a lot of opportunity. He was good at the outset last year, and then as he went around the league a second time, you started to see him taper off, but maybe he was tired. It's the end of a long year. You can think of a lot of reasons why that would happen. And now he just hasn't played that much this year. So I wouldn't say there's pressure on him, but there are questions. And the best way for him to answer those questions is to go out and rake.
Yeah, I mean, and Guardians fans do the simple math. Nick Kurtz, they just saw him this weekend kill the ball for the A's, taking a couple picks later. Jack Caglione is starting to hit for the Royals, taking a few picks later. So those things all factor in.
Yes, there were questions at the time. Did the Guardians sacrifice ceiling? They didn't take Charlie Condon, who went third overall, had the best year of anyone in college baseball last year. And has hit pretty well in the minors. I think he's been better than Bazzana, but he's got some questions too, whether he's going to ever figure out how to lay off or hit a slider. JJ Weatherholt from the Cardinals, he might actually be the best player from the whole draft class. And going into last spring, he was a 1-1 candidate, had a hamstring injury, missed a big chunk of time, ended up going 7th to the Cardinals. So it might be one of those drafts where even if Bazzana turns out to be okay, you can look at a lot of other players and say, oh, I wish they'd taken him. I wish they'd taken him. I don't love that kind of hindsight. If we didn't say it on draft day, probably shouldn't say it a year or two later. But I do think it's fair to look now and say, oh, Bazzana may not turn out to be the best player in the draft class. I think that's a more reasonable way to look at it because of what you said. There's been a lot of successes from guys taken in the next 10 picks or so.
All right, before I let you go, who are some players in the Guardian system that fans should be excited about that kind of are on path to have pretty good or really good major league careers?
I'm a big Cooper Ingle fan. He may not be sort of the sexiest sort of prospect, not like an all-star. He's not going to be a 30-homer guy or anything, but he takes incredible at-bats. He's a really good catcher. He's got just incredible feel for the game. Scouts absolutely love him. It's like that is the catcher on a winning team because of how he receives, how he handles pitching staffs, how he is kind of a field captain. I think he's kind of underrated. I think he's going to get to the big leagues pretty soon. Angel Henao has had some injury issues. I don't think he's played up to his potential so far this year, but I do think he's a better player than just what the pure stat line says. He is still pretty young to be in Double-A. He missed a lot of time, obviously. I'm expecting bigger things from him in the second half as well. And of all those pitchers they took last year, when they took Travis Bazzana, they saved some money in their draft pool that they could then allocate to a number of high school pitchers they took with subsequent picks. The best of them at the time, Braylon Doty, has gotten off to a pretty good start. He's throwing the ball really well. He's throwing strikes, which is a huge issue for high schoolers coming right into full season ball. And it looks like they might have hit on that one. Obviously, he's got to stay healthy, but it looks like mid-rotation starter, maybe better. It'll take a couple of years, but just given how many really talented high school pitchers have struggled on their first exposure to full season ball, the fact that he hasn't is a hugely positive sign.
Keith Law from The Athletic, thanks so much for the time and the insight. As always, appreciate it. Thanks, Keith.
My pleasure.
Keith Law, make sure you check him out. Always some of the best coverage you're going to get from baseball. He writes for The Athletic. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.